Hello and welcome to another episode of Inspired Women Gathering Show. This is a show that talks about all things from life, relationships, spirituality, business, and everything in between. Women are so inspiring, living through their stories, finding resilience, resourcefulness, tenacity, and the powerful impact that we make in the world. I love connecting and having deep conversations, sharing with you the women I am inspired by and so blessed to know. My name is Dixie Bennett. I'm your host. I'm a soulful women and wealth coach and healer, helping heart-centered entrepreneurial women heal their self-worth, embody their soul purpose, and create sustainable business with heart. And I created this platform to highlight amazing women who I come across, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. And I'm so excited to introduce to you my beautiful guest and soul sister, Rebecca Hall Gruyter. And our topic today is the power of visibility. Rebecca is a global influencer, #1 international bestselling and award-winning author and compiler, in-demand publisher, empowering radio show host, reaching over 1 million listeners on 8 networks, and an empowerment leader that wants to help you reach more people. She has built multiple platforms to help experts reach more people. These platforms include radio, TV, books, magazines, the speaker talent search, and live events, creating a powerful promotional reach of over 10 million. Rebecca is the CEO of RHG Media Productions, which includes the RHG TV Network with over 30 weekly programs and publishing arm that has helped 200 plus authors become bestsellers. She is the owner of Your Purpose Driven Practice and the creator of the Speaker Talent Search. RHG Media Productions is an in-demand publisher that specializes in launching books as bestsellers while creating great visibility both for the author and their book. She helps the author be powerfully positioned and the star of their best-selling campaign to reach as many people as possible around the world. Rebecca has personally contributed to 20 plus published books, multiple magazines, and has been quoted in major media, The Huffington Post, ABC News, CBS, that's Canada, NBC, Fox, Thrive Global. She's been recognized as one of the top 10 working women in America by AWWIN Inc. and now helps experts get quoted in major media too. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for being here today.
My pleasure. I'm excited to connect with you, talk with you, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, me too. I was so enjoying our time together. So I'm really excited to dive in and really get to know a little bit more about you. We're talking about visibility today, and I would love for you just to share a little bit about your story, where you started from, and how you got into the platforms that you're playing in right now.
Sure. So my journey, when I look back, it was never my dream to be involved in a global reach and having um, so many different ways that we're connecting with people around the world. My dream was to be invisible, to survive. That was my dream as a little girl. And I grew up in an environment that was really unsafe. And when I would cry out for help, it wasn't believed and I was put back. And the consequences became more severe. So I learned at a really young age that I didn't matter. I am not okay. There is something just horribly wrong with me that is causing this to happen to me. I'm not okay. I don't have any value. So the best course of action to survive was to be invisible, to stay below the radar. So that I was that little girl that just never wanted to go home
Mm-hmm.
and smiled really big, acted like everything was okay when it was not, and tried to keep my head down and survive. And eventually the truth came out, for which I'm very grateful, and I got rescued.
Mm-hmm.
So 12, 13 years old, I got to move into a new environment and I discovered some wonderful things in that journey. I discovered that what I had believed, that I didn't matter, that I wasn't okay, that there was something wrong with me, that it was my fault, that those were actually lies, not truth. I
Mm-hmm.
discovered, in fact, that I'm beautifully and wonderfully made, unique, and that I matter, and that it isn't about perfection. It's about connection and just taking steps every single day, and that's enough on the journey. And ultimately I learned it is safe to be seen and heard, and that has been the hardest part of my journey because it's very We know a lot of things in our head. We're very smart. We have lots of certifications, lots of things we've discovered and learned along the way. But a lot of times it's in our head and it's not in our heart. It's not in our body. And so I knew intellectually I was safe, but it was very different to learn how to embody that and to live it. So I spent lots and lots of years hiding behind a brand, hiding behind an image, showing up a certain way. I learned how to hide in the public eye. Like I had that skill down. So if I showed up a certain way, I wore a certain uniform, I kept my voice at a certain tone, all of those, and I didn't laugh. I had to keep my voice serious and low for the work that I did, that then I would be safe. And if people rejected the information I shared, they were just rejecting information. They were rejecting that image. They weren't rejecting me.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed in that place for many, many years. And eventually I felt like God was calling me to start telling my story. And I was resistant. I didn't feel like I should have to. I had suffered enough. It was unpleasant. I didn't want to talk about those things. I was a financial advisor at that time, had worked really hard to build my practice to the level that it was. And I could just kind of see my path from there on out. And then I did, but I kept feeling this calling, and God started to play these tapes in my head, which I really didn't think was fair. I don't know if anyone has experienced this, that calling thing, that we're resistant to. We're scared by it, and we don't know exactly what it means. And so as God is telling me to start telling my story, I gave him a list of alternate people that would be much better. Here's great people that know how to do that, that are polished and can do a great job. That's not what I do. I talk about finances. That's how I help people. It's not this other stuff. And God started to play all these tapes in my head of the healing journey, because I used to have these wrestling conversations with God where I would be asked to take this step, tell the truth, stand in this place. And I felt at the end of myself that it was so hard, so scary. And I would say, God, I will do this mean, hard, horrible thing you're asking me to do. Tell the truth, stand in this place, if it can make a difference for another little girl. That became my deal. Okay, here's the deal, God. Here's how I will do that. And it gave me the courage, because if what I did that day, I was taking a stand for another, that gave me courage, because I was willing to be scared or uncomfortable or stretched if it can make a difference. But it had to make a difference. That was core to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would take that step. So he played those tapes over and over and over and over every step of the way. And finally I said, okay, I will do this mean, hard, horrible thing you're asking me to do, of telling my story. If it can make a difference for another, their path can be easier because of it. And I don't have to do anything with television, nothing with radio. I don't want to be recorded, no camera, no films. Let's limit the group to 50 people, because I don't think I can connect with more than 50 people at a time. No pictures. I'll use a microphone because my voice isn't super loud. I can give on that. I don't know what this offer thing is. So you just gather the people, tell me what to say. I'm in. Let's go change the world. Yay. And silence.
Right.
And I said, God, I said, yes, let's go. And I felt like he came back to me and said, this is a yes or no, period.
Mm-hmm.
Like there isn't a boundary. There isn't a contingency. Will you go where I call you to share and go, or not? It's your choice. Choose. But there's not boundaries around it. You can't say no to these things. It's yes or no. Trust and go.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally said yes. 9 months of wrestling, in tears, on my knees. So I was very resistant. And I said, okay, God, I will do this. I will tell my story,
Mm-hmm.
but I really hope I don't have to. And I listed everything again, just so he had the list and he was clear.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back at that moment, and nobody was asking me to do any of those things at that time. It's so often we try to say no to things we don't understand, or that becomes a thing we don't know how to approach. So we say no to it. That was what I was doing. Nobody was asking me to be on television or radio or any of those platforms. They were just the biggest, scariest things I could think of to put a boundary around. Like that was a no for me. It was some sort of control I was trying to have. And within a few months, I ended up on stage, live streamed in front of 300 people, cameras rolling, had 2 book deals in the work, a television interview I had felt kind of tricked into. I don't even know how that happened on cable that I was supposed to be on, and a couple of radio interviews lined up. And I remember looking at the stage that we were supposed to get on, and the room felt endless. I don't really know how many people were in the room, but it just felt endless. It was more than 300. There were lots of people in the room. And I remember eyeing the exit. If I needed to leave, I gave myself full permission to just walk off the stage, keep myself safe, and leave if I needed to. But by giving myself that permission in that moment, something switched for me. I discovered that I now was choosing to be there. It was no longer I had to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different energy. It was suddenly I was choosing, and I knew there was someone in that room that needed what I had to offer, and that was enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
If it could make a difference for one. And so I got on the stage, and I remember sharing from my heart. Don't know exactly what I said. I was out of my body,
Yeah.
was speaking from the heart.
Yeah.
Got a standing ovation I never saw, because I was, again, not fully integrated and connected. But I got off the stage, and I remember men and women lining up, and it felt like the line was endless, and I'm sure it wasn't, but it felt that way to me in a good way.
Yeah.
And they started to say, Rebecca, as they hugged me and thanked me for the presentation. They all wanted to touch and connect.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, thank you for sharing today. I was the one. So I must have said that somehow in the presentation, or the message got across. I was the one. Thank you. I needed this.
Right.
And they kept saying that. And then partway through the line, they started to shift, and they started saying, I could tell you were scared. So apparently I didn't hide that.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you were scared, but you were willing to share anyway. And that gives me courage. That inspires me. I'm going to go do this as a result of that. And I remember going home that day just so overwhelmed and grateful and thankful and processing. And what I learned that day is that I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to be willing, and the rest would take care of itself, and just trust.
Powerful. I resonate with everything that you just said. And I think so many people can as well with, the struggle with being visible regardless of where we are in our journey. I see young people, older people, retired people, and some people are so excited to get out there and write their book and get on stage, and then others is there's this start stop energy to it. And I can relate too about stepping on stage. I remember the first time when spirit really took over, and I literally don't remember any of the talk, and people still come up to me to this day from that conversation, where I will never forget that. I will never forget how you made me feel. And I love that, because people do come up, they want to be moved, and when we can share that vulnerability, I think is so absolutely important.
Yeah.
Because anyone can do it, and it's just making the act of doing it, and the resistance part. I have resisted and resisted in so many aspects of my life, and it's for what, the control of what, really. And it is a choice. It's to be in or out. There's only one
Yes.
answer.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I know. And we spend so much energy in that resistance place,
Yeah.
knowing kind of, I think we know at the end of the day we are going to say yes, but we spend a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
in that resistance and that hiding. I think for me, I had a lot of fear around visibility for different reasons, but part of it is I felt like I didn't want to be the center.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was about making a difference. I wanted to have, and there was this, could my story and what happened that was negative actually be used for good? So there was part of that was really inspiring and exciting to me. But the wanting to make a difference and being visible, I wanted people to just somehow know that I cared.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, that by osmosis, by coming into connection, I wouldn't have to stand up, be seen. They would know what I stand for. They know that I'm here for them. They know that I want to lift up and support them. But people are not mind readers.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know unless we're willing to stand in that place and share. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a hard journey for me. I was very fearful of it. I felt very, um, I know I'm blanking on the word, but it was like everyone else would be so much better at it than that
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the skill set. I didn't know how to do that. I felt so over my head,
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to stand in that place and to make a difference. Like, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we feel that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that we're all called every day.
Mm-hmm.
We can choose to be seen. And as we're calling and talking with people on the phone, are we really sharing? Are we really showing up? Or do we have this mask in front of us where we're trying to show up a certain way and be seen a certain way? Versus really, this is what's on my heart. This is what I care about. This is what I'm struggling with today. This is what I'm super excited about and celebrating that's happening. I
Mm-hmm.
think we overly screen the opportunities that we have to connect. Like, visibility isn't just the moment you're on stage, it's every day. Are you choosing to be present and to be visible? And for those of you who are called to help more people, you're called to make a difference, that the gifting you have been given is to serve more people. Then I feel you have an obligation, a responsibility to be seen, to be really easy to find by those who are hurting most. When people are hurting, it's like this big dark pea soup fog comes down and voices get muffled.
Mm-hmm.
They can't hear you. They're just trying to breathe. Their world has been rocked. They're thinking, can I stand?
Mm-hmm.
Can I take another breath? They can't see the hands outstretched. They don't remember the presentation you did 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
the one time you shared something out. The only thing I know that cuts through that kind of darkness is light. And that's what I believe we need to be. That's what visibility is about. It's willing to shine brightly enough that your light cuts through that darkness and they can actually see your hand outstretched. They can actually see who you are, that you're here. And then it's their choice to take the hand or not. But I feel it's our responsibility to shine brightly enough we can actually light a safe path and cut through that darkness. That's what visibility is about. It's actually about the people who need you most. It's not about ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's that um, really taking stock of what, when I think about stepping out into the light. I'm one of those people. I still love to hide. I'm like, I will push everybody else. I will celebrate you, and I want you to come, and I want you to be amazing. And going back to one of the statements you shared earlier, like I just wanted to get through life. I did not want to be visible. And that's something I still, I'm still dancing with in a big way. And yet I'm very much out there. And people are like, wow, Dixie, you're like so out there. I'm like, yeah, I don't feel like I'm out there enough. I should be out there even more. Um, and I do love how you said that the light is just cutting through the darkness, and it's just opening. I see it as a keyhole. I had a vision even just yesterday about that, and I saw it as like a cross, but not like a full cross. It was just more like a keyhole, and it was the keyhole into the heart space, and then it was bringing that key to unlock it, and then it just opened up into a bigger softer light, right? It wasn't this, out on this dark stage and just this bright spotlight on you. It was just more of an expansive expression of light. And I believe that that's what we're all being called into, especially through this pandemic, this change. We're all being called to step in because we're being called to lead differently. We have to
Mm-hmm.
do business differently, and it's
Yep.
also through visibility. So how do we bring more energy to that visible likeness?
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
finding our way in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I find it's so interesting is there's an article I'm writing that will be coming out soon that we're talking about visibility and choosing to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we talk about in the article is this. releasing what no longer is and stepping into what is. And what are we choosing to give energy to? Are we choosing to give it to fear and to the negative and to those things that scare us? Or are we choosing to put our energy into how can I help? What's the next thing? What can I stand for? How can I show up and serve in this environment? There are so many opportunities. There are so many needs, business and personal, that are out there if we're willing to be open and to step into that space. And I think sometimes we get fearful, or we get caught up in how things used to be, and we can be disappointed or frustrated, but we're kind of looking at a door that's closed or a window that's closed, and yet there's all these other windows and doors around us that we could be opening. There is so much opportunity, and it's really important for, I believe, the world, for all of us to move forward, to look at those opportunities, to choose to stand for those things that matter, and to choose to step forward. And we do that heart by heart, life by life, finding where we can make a difference, where we can encourage another, where we can re-echo out the greatness in others. And I see sometimes where we're spending energy tearing down the greatness of others, or causing harm, or echoing out fear. And not that it's okay to feel fear, but that's not a reason to stop. We don't want to keep feeding it, but really honoring and releasing, and then look at what we can do. It's an inside job.
Absolutely.
How are we choosing to show up? What are we telling ourselves? What are we listening to? And what are we echoing out energetically, verbally? What are we sharing out? Because that's a vibration that's going out in the world, and it matters, and it can be harnessed and used for good, or it can echo out the other. And I think it's really important that we are mindful and purposeful of that, because we affect each other. We do.
I hear you. I'm curious to know more. Like, I want to go back to, at the point where you said, I don't want to be on TV. I don't want to have lights and camera. I don't want the book. I don't want the spotlight. And at what point, like, when did that start transitioning for you? Because I know your background was in finance, and I know you had a very successful career there. And then what was that, like, what was the pivotal point where you just decided to move forward into the
I don't,
spotlight?
yeah, I don't know if there was one pivotal moment. It was almost like it happened around me, is almost what it just kept happening. No matter what I did, it kept becoming bigger and more visible, and it kept growing. I learned I have the gift of growing things. I do.
Yes, you
And it's and now I harness that, and I'm excited by it. But then it was a little bit intimidating. I'm trying to think of, for example, those two book deals that I was part of that I mentioned. So they were both anthologies, and an anthology, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a book compilation. It's where multiple authors come together and each write a section or a chapter. And so that's the first way I decided to start telling my story in the written word, was to do it that way. I thought, well, I can handle a chapter, and then I can learn about this, and I'm not alone, I'm in a community. So I chose to be part of two anthologies at the same time. They were both quality anthologies released at the same time, but one of them was just released, and I still have those in boxes in my garage. Great information, great stories, amazing people, beautiful book, but it's not in the hands and hearts because it was just released. And the other book was launched. So it went out into multimedia, best-selling campaign, all of these different things, where it went into radio, television, live conference, live events, all these different things, book signing stuff. And I even had this opportunity to do a video. And it had been a large investment for me at that time to make in doing both of those books. And so for me, if I'm investing the dollar, I'm going to follow all the rules, check all the boxes, do all the things. So I never questioned that any of it was optional. Like some people took doing the video as optional. I took it as just what you're supposed to do. So I just did my first video ever
Interesting.
in this book. And I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. I just kind of spoke from my heart, sent it in. because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. I don't know how many, I know all the authors didn't because it was optional, but for me, I just, checked the box, did it, sent it in. And the combination of all of that, what I learned from doing the video part, I got a call from the person who was heading up that group in that department. She goes, Rebecca, that's one of the best videos we've ever received.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. And I didn't know quite how to take that, but I said, well, thank you. I'm thinking, well, I don't know, I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm glad I did it right. Then I can check that off. I get a gold star. And she goes, no, I'm serious. You should be doing stuff on screen. You should be in video. You need to be doing things in television. You need to be in front of people like that. Yeah. I bet they say that to everybody. You know how we brush off those things. And then she went on to say, in fact, we love it so much, we're actually putting it right behind the compiler's story. So when people are getting a sample of the multimedia book, they're going to see yours. So it went out all around the world, as did the book. We go to the conference, and I had already gotten all this exposure. I was having trouble adjusting to it. I hid in my room half the time because it just was too much to process. And then I would come out and I would sign books, and then I would go back and hide in my room again. Then I come back. I needed some of that space to acclimate and recenter, and I was proud and I was excited. It just was overwhelming at times to take that in. And while I was there at the conference, we got a call. I got a call. I keep saying we because I see us as an organization. So I got a call, and it was an executive producer from Voice America Radio. And he said that he'd been seeing me in the news, really felt like I was ready to stand in a global space, not just locally, and really believed in what I stood for. And they wanted my voice on the network. Right. And I remember thinking, what I stand for, I have a, I have a platform. I stand for something. I stand for people. I want people to step forward and be seen and heard. I want to encourage and empower women in particular. That was on my heart, to help bring them forward. But I didn't really know what that meant. So I just stalled for about 6 months and kept having conversations, and then got intimidated when I looked up what Voice America was, and I did a little bit of research. And I was speaking to an executive producer that could help me create all of this. And finally, I thought, you know what? I'll try it. At this point, everything was scary. So I just kind of kept saying yes to stuff. And stepped into having that radio show. I still have it to this day. It's been just over 6 years that we've had that show, and it's now syndicated, so played out through multiple networks. And that's been really exciting to see multiple channels, networks. It led to having a television show that would lead to a television channel that led to a television network. For a while, I even got to be the head of women's channel, women's network, actually, on Voice America, the women's channel, both in TV and radio. And I got to be a part of that, and poured into by amazing people with extraordinary experience in TV and radio. And I got to learn from them, and then lean into building my own network and kind of bringing that forward. And then that all led to having a publishing arm, kind of full circle. I decided to give back and share some of the amazing journey I'd had because of the anthologies. I thought, wow, if we could do that for other people, I want to do that. And I had publishers coming to me at this point wanting to publish my story, which is an amazing honor. And as I sat with it, and I really felt into what mattered to me in that, as happy as I am to share my story, if it can make a difference for another, I'm happy to do that. But I am so excited by the idea of multiple voices coming together, being able to lean in and touch even more people's lives. That is really exciting to me. So I went back to the publisher and I thanked them. I said, but it'd be even better than just like my story. My book would be a book where we can bring together all of these voices, because it's more than my voice is needed. Same thing in television. If it was just about my story and my voice, I would have been given a show. I was given a channel. I was given a network. It's about the people that we know. It's about all of those connections coming together and making a global difference. It's amazing what we can do when we come together. So on the publishing side, I started by leading these anthologies, these projects, and loved it, loved bringing them forward, but became very passionate about doing the launches because I didn't want the books on the shelf. I want them in people's hands and hearts. I want them to launch. I want them to have great visibility so they can reach the hands and hearts they're called to reach,
Mhm.
not just be on a shelf, because it's a calling. When you're called to speak, when you're calling to lead, when you are called to write a book, it's
Mhm.
because people need the message.
Mhm.
They need the information. It needs to not be on the shelf.
Mhm. I couldn't agree more. I think, but I've done anthologies with you in the past, and I've been a member of many different types of anthologies, and I really enjoyed very much like you shared earlier, the two books. One is still sitting in the box and the other one is out there. And I think the blessing of anthologies is that it's a community event, it's a community expression, and it's a community experience. And I know what you do so well is you help to shine the light on so many other people. And I really enjoyed that, doing the live event, coming down to California. Um, every author had an opportunity to read parts of their chapter from the book. There was a red carpet experience, and I actually compare that because I get asked to be in anthologies all the time. But I compare your experience to that, and there's really nobody else doing it the way that you do it. And I, just really celebrating each other, looking to get, like, here's the platform. I'd love for you to come and be a part of it. And even going back to that optional book, of course, everything is truly optional. But are
Mm-hmm.
you willing to lean in? Are you willing
Yeah.
to step forward and be a part? And to me, that's the leadership aspect. Is are you going to lead by example and really step in and embody the full experience? Or is there that start stop energy still that's stopping you from really leaning forward and moving forward with it? And going back to what you said too about, you just checked off the boxes, even though there was a part of you that didn't want to be visible, and yet you were still doing all the things that the list said to do, and you just jumped into it with your whole heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we overthink things
Mm.
sometimes. Yeah, if we said yes, we said yes. So
Mm-hmm.
let's have it be a full yes and check all the boxes and bring it all forward and trust that if we're trusting a leader of a program, a leader of a process, whatever it may be, trust it all the way, not just the parts you like.
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to bring all of it. If you felt in and you knew this was a yes, trust it completely. Really bring it all. Don't hold parts of you back. All of you is needed.
Mm-hmm.
And look for those opportunities to stretch. Look for those opportunities to grow and bring it forward.
Mm-hmm. One other thing, well, and I've shared this with you before. So I call you Oprah. You're the new aged Oprah, I think. And in our last conversation, we were talking about mother leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you just said too, everything that you touch, everything, you're here to help grow. You're here to grow platforms, you're here to grow communities, you're here to grow people. And especially with all the platforms that you're in, the magazine, like publishing, like
Mm-hmm.
huge. The whole
Mm-hmm.
industry of publishing has been around for years, hundreds of years. Public speaking is even more new, I think, in the
Mm-hmm.
last 10 years. I mean, you
Yeah.
had the gurus, you had the really high-end speakers, and now there's different platforms where everybody can play in. And the leadership aspect of that, from the mother leadership and the community growth, it's like that mother nurture to like gather everyone and bring them in. I think is I mean that's part of the new wave of leadership, the new wave of being able to make a difference in the world is collectively. It's not I and me and I'm standing over here. It's how
Mm-hmm.
can we help each other to really shine without having that ego present. So how would you say, especially for women going forward, how do we get out of that ego and just really come from that place of nurturing?
Well, part of it is taking a breath
Hmm.
and just releasing comparison,
Yeah.
releasing that you have to be like someone else, or you have to win, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
We are all amazing.
Mhm.
And we can celebrate our differences. We can celebrate the wonder that everybody is. And when I look at the sky and the stars, there are
Mhm.
all these stars that shine brightly, and one star fully shining doesn't take away from the other stars. Like, there's room for everybody.
Yeah.
And when we're all willing to shine, it lights the path for another. And we can extend the hands and reach out and lift each other up. And that doesn't take away from anything we do. If anything, it lifts everybody up.
Mhm.
And I feel like we need to consciously sometimes release competition
Mhm.
and celebrate collaboration. It's okay to admire qualities and accomplishments in each other and celebrate that, but do that without the comparison piece. Comparison never leads to anything good.
Right.
It just doesn't. And
Yeah.
we're so quick to speak negatively to ourselves, to tear ourselves down, instead of appreciating what we're learning, what we're growing, what we're discovering. I tried this. I will never do that again that way. But now we can cross that off the list. I know. Let's try it this way.
Mhm.
And be willing to learn, be willing to lift and celebrate each other. There's room for everybody. There's room for all the businesses. There's enough, more than enough, when we can remember to come together. And I think that's a little bit different than sometimes the messages we've heard or we've told ourselves, but it's the truth. And competition, I feel like none of us are made exactly the same
I agree.
on purpose. Like, all of our differences are needed.
Mhm.
And the willingness to share them, the texture of who we are, our quirks as we see them, our
Mhm.
gifts. Like, I had, when I was stepping into the space of becoming what I deemed a professional speaker, I had this list of things that I thought that meant. And I
Mhm.
hired an amazing coach who, and it was a huge stretch for me. Travel was involved, the investment was much bigger than I was accustomed to spending on those kinds of things. And as you know, I'm a list maker. We've already discovered I like lists in our conversation. So I made a list
Yeah.
of what the expert needed to fix in me so that I could deliver and be what
Mhm.
I decided a professional leader and
Right.
professional speaker was. And the first thing I had on the list was my laugh. It had to go. The laugh needs to go. It's so not professional.
Mm.
And I remember flying down, having my long list, and I presented it. I went over it with great passion with the expert that I had hired. And this person had worked with like Drew Barrymore, Room 5, like kind of the celebrity space, really knew what it takes to be in those spaces. So I trusted him as an expert in that, but I was very connected to my journey in it. And so I'm telling the expert what they need to do. And how many of us have done that? Like,
Yeah,
you're
controlling
expert.
the situation. Yeah.
Here's the list. And he was very patient. He listened to me share it all. And then he goes, great. And he sets it to the side. And I remember kind of going, whoa, wondering why it's over there instead of in the middle of the conversation where it should be. He goes, Rebecca, you're in finance, right? And I go, yeah. He goes, so you get assets and liabilities. I'm thinking, oh, language I understand. Yes, I do. And he goes, so let me explain something here, because I think you're confused about what an asset is and what a liability is.
Mm.
And but he used like bridging language so I could follow and understand. And he goes, an asset is something about you that people love, that they remember, they associate it with you. It's contagious in a good way. When they hear that, they think of you. When they see that, they think of you. When that comes into any sphere of them recognizing it, it's you that comes to their heart and mind. That's an asset. That's your laugh. If anything, you should be doing that more. It's contagious in
Mhm.
a good way. That's not the thing to cross off the list. That's not the thing to release. I'm so glad he told me what I needed to hear, not what I thought was
Mhm.
how it worked.
Me too.
And then and then he goes on to say, And a liability, because he knows I want to know both, because a liability is something that interferes with your message.
Mhm.
If you have a quirk or a habit where you're saying yes, but it's communicating no,
Right.
that's something you need to work on. Or people can't understand the words you're saying for some reason, that's something to work on. Things that interfere with your message, that's a liability. And I think we think those things that are different or unique about us are liabilities when they're actually assets that we should be leaning into and
Mhm.
bringing forward more. And when he said this, and I really felt it, not just heard it, but felt it
Mhm.
and embodied it, I felt such freedom. I
Mhm.
could be me. And I laughed with joy. And I heard my grandmother's laugh for the first time. This was the gift she'd given me that all these years I thought was a liability.
Right.
And yet it was the gift of her laughter.
Mhm. And I love that story because I love, ever since I first met you, your laugh, it just washes over me. And I feel it in my core because I know that it does come from a wholehearted place of just sheer, because it's a sheer joy laugh. It's very playful.
Yes.
And that's what I know to be for you. Like you have all the qualities of nurturing. Like you're a nurturing person, a wholehearted, big-hearted person who feels into what they're doing. Even though you have the intellectual aspects, you still have this, all you are. Everything, every time I think of you, you serve from such a great place of heart.
Mm.
And that's that laugh. I love your laugh. And I do. I light up every time I hear it because I don't even have to be seeing you, and I hear the laugh, and I know exactly where you
It
are.
carries.
It carries out, yes.
Yeah, it does.
And that's infectious. And I think too, coming back to that unique piece that each one of us is the star, and each one of us is the flower. And that's why I'm really passionate about bringing women together and bringing women into the limelight because I love seeing groupings of women's faces. I love seeing the shapes and the sizes and the differentiation and, the blonde hair, the dark hair, the silver hair, just all the aspects of celebration of womanhood, regardless of the age that you're in.
Yes.
Hmm.
All the beautiful textures. I love
All
it.
the beautiful textures.
Hmm.
Yes, all the beautiful
Hmm.
textures. Absolutely. So I would love for you to share, even if somebody is just thinking about getting on stage, or or even just thinking about writing that book, what would be, or even what do you feel comes first? Is it getting on stage and learning just to speak your truth, verbally, or is it the written word?
I don't think there is a first. When you were saying what would I share with them, what was bursting into my heart was yes, just do it.
Just do it.
like it was that kind of
Just
an
pick one.
energy.
Just do
Just
it.
yes,
Mhm.
do good, go.
Mhm.
um, but starting, take those steps, and don't overthink it. That we overthink, we overthink, and one of the challenges for me, because the business side of me,
Mhm.
I'm really great at business plans, lists, that kind of thing. So when I first started writing, everything came out as like a list, a bullet point form. It sounded like a plan. It didn't have my heart connected in it.
Mhm.
I could speak my heart much more easily than I could write it.
Mhm.
And so how I started is I actually recorded myself and then got it transcribed,
Mhm.
because then I was able to, it was still me, but I was able to look at it, get it out of swirling around inside of me, capture how I could tie my heart into my message and get it on paper. And then I could work with it so that it flowed nicely, because transcripts are different than reading when
Mhm.
somebody's reading. And that helped me over some of the hurdles that I had, because I could stare at the blank page. I would not quite know what to say, bullet point
Mhm.
format. I'm like, well, this doesn't convey a message other than it's organized. So finding your way to bring your message forward. If it's having someone interviewing, ask you questions, great. Record it, get it transcribed, get it out of you and
Mhm.
start sharing it. And don't worry about it being perfect. The way I write now is very different than how I wrote in the very beginning, but the very beginning is still serving,
Mhm.
and it continues to serve. And then the way right now serves too. All along the way we can serve. And I talk with authors sometimes been working on their manuscript for 3 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts my heart a little bit because I look out in the world. This is part of why I'm so passionate about this work. I look out in the world and I see men and women around the world that are believing those lies I used to believe, and it hurts my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And every day they're going by is continuing to believe that. And when you are being called to share your message, it's because it's needed now, not 10 years from now, not when it's perfect and polished and the texture is all gone.
Yeah.
It's needed now. So I
Mm-hmm.
encourage you to get support to bring it forward. I don't think it's a solo journey. We really need each
Mm-hmm.
other along the way. The solo journey thing is a myth. It's not
Mm-hmm.
true. You don't need to do it on your own. There. And your time is now. If you've been waiting, now is the time. So start bringing it forward, and don't worry about the details. Don't worry about it being just right. If this is your first time, you've never done it before, no worries. Just start and look for people that can walk beside you in bringing that journey forward. I found anthologies an amazing place to start
Mm-hmm.
because there's a timeline, there's a community. I'm only responsible for one section.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be kind of a nice place to start. And then everyone's sharing out. So you get to kind of learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So if all of this is new, I encourage you to look at anthologies as a way to kind of start as you're getting your message out there. And then it gives you a book, a platform that you can speak on, that you can have at the back of the room, so to speak, or you can repurpose your, we're all about repurposing these days. So here's a hot tip on that, that when you're part of an anthology, always make sure that you own your content.
Mm-hmm.
Underline, bold, highlight in yellow, own your content.
Mm-hmm.
Then after, you always want to wait politically until after the book is launched and it's released, but repurpose your chapter. It's already edited, it's already formatted. You now have a beautiful ebook with your message
Yeah.
that you can use as a free gift to grow your list and do different things and do giveaway.
Mm-hmm.
So you can leverage some of these pieces without having to build them all separately. They can start to work together for you. So look
Mm-hmm.
for anthologies as a great place to start. Speaking, um, especially if there's some fear, it's important to be part of something that gives you deadlines on all of this. Deadlines, you've got to turn it in, you've got to do it, to kind of just check the boxes and do it. Because if there's fear and resistance, we can stall for years.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll all sound like really good reasons not to. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll focus on the reasons not to instead of the reasons to. And the reason to is because you're called and you're needed. So find something that can give you a timeline that can move you forward. We have, can I share one of the things that we
Mm-hmm.
have that
Yeah.
supports people in that? It's part of our give back. So we have a thing called the Speaker Talent Search that has deadlines, it has certain things you need to turn in. And it's part of our giving back to people. So there's an application that you go through that you have to have certain things in it and bring it forward. At the end of the whole process, there can be some great speaking opportunities that can open up to you, but only if you go through the steps and turn things in on time and get things here and there. So a lot of people use it to help them bring a new presentation forward, you help bring a new concept forward. Those deadlines can really help bring it forward, and you have to show up. And it's a yes or no. We were talking about that earlier. It's not a someday, maybe I'll never get to it someday thing. It's really giving it a time frame, creating a time where you'll do it. So whether it's a program like that or some other program, find something that gives you deadlines that you kind of have to do it to complete the program. That will help push you a little bit, and you will help you not get so caught up in the perfection, doing it right kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so important. So important. Um, I used to be a perfectionist too, and I've learned over the years just to let go, and that's when the magic really happens. It just, you become the channel of that information that you're meant to birth into the world.
Mm, yeah, it's just that willingness.
Mm-hmm.
Willingness. And there's so much we can give, there's so much we can bring forward if we're willing. And that's why when it's 3-10 years, that people have been working with and fine tuning it. I'm going to review it one more time, have one more person look at it. Here's another thing for writers: when you're starting, don't have a zillion people look at it. It's You're going to get so many opinions, you'll lose your own voice in it. And one of the things when you start to write, it takes a little bit of time to find your writing voice. It's different than your speaking voice, it's different than your other voices, it's your writing voice. And really recognizing, this is me, this is my truth, this is how I express it, versus someone else. In so much of our society, when you ask for feedback, we try to share how to improve, how we would do it, the way we would fine tune it, the way we would polish it. But we're not the ones being called to bring forward what you're being called to bring forward.
Yeah.
Stand in your truth. It's your voice that's needed. Like my laugh was needed, not someone else's laugh, that I created to fit in a certain way. It's what we're called to bring forward. So really be careful about, especially when we're so community focused, we get lost in that. And I see that happen sometimes with authors. So if you're wanting feedback, be clear why. Are you wanting affirmation? Are you wanting encouragement? Are you wanting feedback on, does this make sense to this? Does it flow? Was there a gap? Is this part confusing? What was your favorite part? Be clear on what you're asking so that people can come alongside you and support you in that. But just asking for feedback, you're going to get there's a zillion ways you can say things, and you're going to start to doubt and lose your voice in it. So be careful around that when you're writing. Same thing with presentations, because it really needs to be from you, from your heart, your message that you're sharing out. And a tip I was thinking for new speakers, one of the things you can do is go in front of a mirror and make eye contact with yourself when you're sharing. And it'll feel weird, and then you're going to get distracted watching yourself. But it's the same thing when you're in front of an audience. And speak your message out loud. Get used to hearing your voice and how it connects, and then go extreme. Have fun. See how wide you can make that movement. See how extreme you can make your voice. Play with that. Have fun. Give yourself that full range for when you are on stage. It doesn't mean you have to use the full range, but we think we are more animated than we are on stages sometimes. And we can use a full range of our mind, our body, our energy, voice levels. We can use all of those things as we communicate. It's not just the words. In fact, people rarely remember the words. It's a small percent. They remember, like you said earlier, Dixie, how you made me feel. They remember that. They remember the connection. And the more we bring all of our mind, body, soul, spirit into the presentation, the more clearly they can hear us and feel us. So new speakers, have fun. We get so worried sometimes about the words being just right. It's not even about that. It's about really connecting with the audience, and get used to looking at an audience in the eyes.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things I learned too about my voice, I remember the first time I heard my voice, I was like, oh God, that sounds horrible. And now, I mean, over the years, I've had such deep healing experiences by recording myself and then listening back and hearing it in lots of different capacities, from toning to, and these are all things that I practice in as techniques, right? Learning to tone, how to use your voice, healing just with the hum, just learning to feel your voice. But when you hear your voice and play it back, even with meditations, I always find people are looking to other people's voices to listen to. And I'm like, just record something for yourself in your own voice, because it's so healing when you can actually, because it's your cells recognize the sound of it, even though your mind not recognize it. So when you practice speaking, record it. Always record it and play it back, because then you're taking it in each and every time. Your cells are taking it in. And that's what happens when you stand on stage. That was an experience I learned. And that's when people were leaning in. I really recognized the difference where when I was really in my truth, people were leaning in. And then people were lined up to come and speak with me, to connect with me, to, hold my hand, to shake my hand, to say hello, and just to say thank you.
Yes.
It's when you're in that alignment, it's powerful.
Yes. It is. It's so, when I was thinking, one of the things as a radio host, because I was still so early in my whole journey, my
Hmm.
executive producer made me do this, and I wouldn't have done it otherwise. But again, it was what you were supposed to do, so I did it. And he made me listen to my show
Hmm.
every week. And I had to listen to it before he would talk to me next.
Hmm.
And so there was accountability, and I had to do it. And it was so hard. I sounded so different than I thought I sounded.
Hmm.
And to learn to appreciate how I do sound and to find a wonder in that took a while. And one of the things that was really hard as a host of my own show, kind of discovering my voice in this, was to separate from being a host running it to being a listener.
Hmm.
So when you're a presenter or recording your presentation, stop being in your head as
Hmm.
presenting, pretend you're in the audience.
Hmm.
And this was some of the greatest advice he gave me. He goes, listen as if you're a listener. And what you forget it's you and you get caught up and you love, do more of that.
Yeah.
What you feel disconnected or kind of separate from or pushes you back, do less of that. And it
Hmm.
was really great advice because we get so critical. This is what I was thinking. That's when this weird technical thing happened, that got disconnected. Like we're still in that part of what is happening
Hmm.
versus the experience the audience is having, which is very, very different. And I found at moments I would forget and get caught up in my show. And it wasn't the moments I thought that it would be. It wasn't where I was more professional. It
Good.
was some of the unexpected, some of the parts that just seemed really alive. And we ended up in this tangent we never even expected.
Yeah.
Like those were the moments that I got caught up in. And
Good.
so I think it's so valuable to listen. And when I first watched myself on film at my presentation, doing my presentations, I had no idea I was so animated. I couldn't understand why every picture had my arms up in the air like all the time. I thought, what is that? I know I speak with them, but why are my arms all
Right.
the way up? And then I watched myself on film. I'm like, wow, that's what I do. I'm all over that stage. I am very animated. The arms are up. I'm like, well,
Mhm.
no, I guess they weren't just like choosing the time to shoot the arms up. It was, I didn't know how I was. And then there were things I saw, went, oh, that doesn't look good on stage. Okay, let's be mindful of that next time
Yeah.
and shift that, but not criticism. I didn't delete it out. I learned from it and embraced what was good and carried that forward.
Yeah, that's so huge. Well, even doing these recordings and doing this show, I listen on average for sure 3 times before I post it live. Because I listen to it when I'm preparing it and I let it play out so I can hear it. Sometimes I let it play in the background, and then other times, like I sit and watch the whole thing. And there's every single episode, I'm pulling my notebook out. I'm like, oh man, how did I miss that? Those were such good, juicy tips. And so I unconsciously have been actually sitting back and really listening to the episodes as a listener.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so thank you
Beautiful.
for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So important. So we're just gonna wrap up our time here, and I just, just a couple of last minute tips, even just for self-care, especially when you're starting to get out into speaking. I'd love to hear from you some of your tips to, just to prepare yourself for getting out on stage, to, whether it's a big event, small event, or even just, something as simple as this, just a one-on-one experience.
Yeah, be aware of how you're made and how you're wired, because the more you can honor that and set yourself up for success, the more you're going to be able to shine and the more you're going to be able to serve. And I know Dixie, you and I talked about this
Mhm.
because I'm really careful about how much I do video. It's not that I don't love video and like connecting with people, but for me, it takes more energy than other types of connection.
Mhm.
And so I'm really careful about how much energy I spend in a day so that I can serve at the highest level. So when I'm scheduling video things, I don't do it casually, and I'll put them on different days so I can fully show up, energetically be fully there, and not be at a depleted place. And I have found with, especially with the pandemic and so much Zoom conversations, not picking on Zoom, whatever format you're using, that we're not always aware of if it's draining us or not. We're treating it casually.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great for connection, but be aware if it's taking a lot of energy, if you are more drained, perhaps switch to an audio format and then use the video for when it's really important to have that face-to-face video type of connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I have found to be really important in the work that I do. Also, making sure I am staying hydrated. We had water right before we went live, like keeping those practical things in place so that we can continue to stay strong, be balanced, be in our body, and be present without becoming dehydrated or all those other things. I think that's important, that care. And one of the other things I'm finding in the pandemic, especially, is we need a little more time
Mm-hmm.
to recenter, to balance, to release what is not ours. If you tend to be more sensitive or an empath, you're picking up on a lot of energy that is uneven around you right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a little bit more time to process, to release. So give yourself that time. Sometimes if you're feeling more drained and tired, it really isn't you. It's the stuff you're picking up around you. So
Mm-hmm.
keeping up those good practices to release what is not yours, to draw boundaries around yourself and time and energy, so that you are, in a sense, kind of ready in all seasons, because you don't know. That's another thing with the time that we're in. One conversation, someone can be on fire and they are so excited about what is coming forward, what is being created because of what's happening and how they can make a difference. And
Mm-hmm.
then the next conversation can be someone who's just trying to breathe, that had an incredible loss, that
Mm-hmm.
needs space held for them. And in order to be able to um, hold that range, you want to make sure that you are centered, you're getting the sleep that you need, that you have clear boundaries so you're not taking on what isn't yours, and you're able to help people process and release wherever they are. I even find that with authors that we're working for, there's a whole journey, speakers too, the whole journey you go through of excited, afraid, scared, wonderful. This, there's a whole range you go through, and holding that space is really important for them and for yourself. So those are just some tips
Mm-hmm.
I would give, especially for times that we're in right now. I feel like it's taking a little bit more. And so that means we need to take a little bit more for ourselves too, to be able to serve. And it is really needed right now that we're willing to serve, we're willing to be the bright lights. If you are feeling that calling, whatever way it is, honor it. That means people need what you have. Be willing to bring it forward and be willing to stand in your value as you bring it forward.
Yeah. Isn't she wonderful? Thank you so much. This has been a really enjoyable time. I so appreciate all of your tips and all of your insights and information, and especially around visibility. I think visibility is it's not really talked about enough, especially for new businesses. And there's, you know, it's never too early to start speaking, to have a book written, to start finding different ways to really to differentiate yourself and put yourself out there. So I really appreciate all that you shared with us today, and especially those tips. The Zoom or the screen fatigue is absolutely a real thing. I've definitely found it for myself, and just balancing that time out. So you can reach Rebecca. She's got a couple of links. RHG TV Network, the speaker talent search, and I'll be posting some of her links in the show notes below. So thank you again, Rebecca, for being with us today and sharing your heart. To our viewers, thanks for watching. I hope you found some value, and of course, I'd love for you to share, comment, share it out with your friends, and of course, we're just continuing to bring light and love into the world. And until next time, abundant love. Thank you so much.